Around the World with Valery Shanin. Travel across Iran has become the next stage of the project World Without Visa, within which Valery Shanin travels only to the countries for the Russians with no visa required. In this journey, his fellow travelers were Oleg Semichev from Tashkent, Kate Klementeva and Ludmila Kachanova from Sakhalin Island, and Mikhail Ivanov from Almaty. Iran is a unique country. In the opinion of UNESCO specialists, it is included in a list of 3 countries with the wealthiest cultural and historical heritage. And at the same time, it is not included in top 100 on number of tourists. The reason is evident: image of country of evil. But one may reject prejudices and look at Iran with his own eyes. Iran, country and people. April, spring. In Moscow, snow is still lying, and tulips are already blooming in Iran. Valery Shanin, Oleg Semichev and Ludmila Kachanova fly to Baku from Domodedovo Airport 3 together. They meet there Kate Klementeva and Mikhail Ivanov. They fly to Tehran 5 together already. The first breakfast in Iran, surprisingly modest. No comparison with Turkish one, for example.
На нас смотрят.
Это на тебя смотрят, на нас не смотрят.
Women have been already dressed according to the local traditions. Women are not permitted here to go out without a shawl. Foreign women are also concerned in it. All large cities are the same. Fast in the streets, smog, which is added with the specified stink of cheap petrol in Iran, traffic jams on the roads. Street traffic is irregular in Tehran. Pedestrians cross the street at any place and time they want. Traffic lights and zebra crossing are no authority for drivers at all. The caves of Ali Sadr are considered to be the most famous places of interest in Iran. There is a water route for tourists. Its length is 2,000 meters, the longest of the boat underground routes in the world. In the cave, all the visitors have been given life jackets. 3 boats have been coupled in one train. Catamaran has become the locomotive where 2 boaters are traveling.
1 millimeter every 100 years. And this looks like waterfall. First people come about 50 years ago. The entryway has been discovered in about 400 years ago. As safety, the entryway, just the entryway. They didn't have enough facilities for them to come to the boat. And this here we have. This is the shape of Liberty statue.
У тебя столько денег нет, сколько они стоят.
Лепешки.
У тебя столько денег нет.
Flat cakes weren't bought. We went to have a lunch, and then we immediately got underway. The petrol costs little in Iran. To travel by taxi here is cheaper than to travel by bus in Russia. And if splitting this sum on 5 people, it will be almost free of charge at all.
Такой вот. Мы попросили в горшочный цех, он привез нас на свалку, говорит: берите, что хотите, только мне еще полтинник накиньте. За блатной показ.
It's not a rubbish heap, but the waste products of ceramic production. Ready-made products are stored at the same waste plot of land. The local people came over to meet us, so it was them who took us to the nearest ceramics factory. Furnace has been already filled with the articles ready to be burned, but the works still continues. Shahr-Lalizin city, or just Lalin, in 20 kilometers northward from Hamadan, the largest center of ceramic production in Iran. 80% of population are involved in ceramic production or at least have an occupation connected with it. Ceramics is made as in old times and the old way, manually. On potter's wheel, invented thousands years ago. Frankly speaking, without food drive, but with electric one. In handicraft workshops, it can't be called a factory. There are usually no hired people. All work is performed by the members of one family. Ceramics is the family business, and it's not bad, because the annual income from ceramics production export only makes up more than $30 million. There are few English language experts in Iran. One must communicate mostly with the help of pictures.
Блин, я, говорит, с высоты такой не видел.
А он, наверное, единственный.
Hamadan is one of the most ancient cities in Iran. In the ancient times, it was called Ekbatana. In the center of Hamadan, there is a mausoleum of Esther and Mordecai. Nobody knows when it was built exactly, but Jewish travelers of the 13th century had already seen it. And Jews in Iran in that time had already set out on a pilgrimage to it annually. The Book of Esther is included in Old Testament in Christian Bible. On the wall there is a line from the Book of Esther. Mordecai the Jew was next unto King Artaxerxes, and great among the Jews, and accepted of the multitude of his brothers, seeking the wealth of his people and speaking peace to all his tribe. The study of other inscriptions in the tomb has shown that there were buried two brothers, serving as doctors in court of Mongolian rulers in Iran, and not Esther and Mordecai as it was thought before. Now there are 45,000 Jews in Iran. They are who give money for the maintenance of the tomb. Memorial of Self-Defense is dedicated to all Iranians who died in the Iran-Iraq War. On the great territory, grand monuments, busts of heroes, models of military equipment are installed. In the museum, there were recreated the most meaningful scenes of war. Collected historic documents, photos.
Belong to the Air Force. These galleries belong to the Air Force. You see the planes. One of those professors in nuclear killed in his car by the bombs of the terrorists, Israel terrorists.
Смотри, держи.
Foreigners come to Hamadan rarely. That's why the travelers provoke curiosity every time.
Сувениры любят вообще отпад.
The city surrounded by green mountains was summer residence of kings. On the outskirts of Hamadan, in Canyon Alvand, in the park near waterfall Granjname, stone writings were saved. All of them tell us about the victories of the Persian king Dari. Fortress Nazijan was built in 750 BC. The place was wonderful, on the top of almost right cone-shaped hill, standing out among the plain. The fortress was 3-storied and 27 meters high. It enclosed a Padana palace, 2 Zoroastrian temples, and barracks, living accommodation and storehouses as well. The fortress existed during Achaemenid Empire and during Parthian Kingdom.
Смотри, какое место здесь.
Excavations were being conducted by English archaeologists under Professor David Stronach's supervision. There were who built the iron roof for defense of walls made from unbaked brick.
Если бы крышу здесь не поставили, все бы смылось. А так получается высокие стены глиняные. Все чисто из глины.
Смотри, здесь как будто печка.
Даже как бы не глина, а глина с навозом.
Это само.
Да.
Здесь не так просто все, на корточках приходится заходить. Почему? Потому что очень низкий вход. И очень достаточно крутой, в принципе. Мишка, осторожнее. Внизу помещение какое-то.
Вход оказался тупиковый. Внизу есть казематы, но вход завален. Пробраться дальше не удалось. Но куда-то пробрались все-таки.
Хорошо,
Опа.
клаустрофобия, никто не страдает.
Да, и не говори.
Ой, ой, разогнуться хоть можно.
Первый раз едет человек автостопом.
Да? Ну, поделись
А как ощущения?
ощущением.
Ощущения классные.
Ощущение крещения. Дорога, дорога.
Да.
Да.
Понятно, да. Спасибо.
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 Таксист вилял, петлял, и вот прям, можно сказать, привез нас тогда, когда нужно. Чтобы мы сели именно на этот поезд.
Near the village beach, there is a waterfall of the same name, one of the most famous in Iran. The travelers got here on Friday, a holiday for Muslims. On the bank of the river there is a crowd of people. Families have gathered here. There are large companies of youth as well.
Как вы появились?
Нельзя было пройти.
Так вот,
Это он может, да. Это сам может.
так вот живем,
Голодаем.
голодаем каждый день по кебабчикам.
Province Loristan is the dampest place in Iran. Precipitation falls here mostly. That's why the mountains of Zagros are so green.
Ставили вроде ничего, да, ветра нету. А потом как ветер начался. И у нас одна из палок этих сломалась. Пришлось, короче, верхнюю часть снимать, засовывать в палатку, накрываться как одеялом. Ну, эффект какой-то все-таки это дало. А так бы, наверное, вообще уже не разговаривали бы сейчас.
In spring, the slopes of the mountain Osteran are covered with flowers. Among them, there are unique inverted tulips, or in Persian, Lalevashgun. They are also called Ashkemarian, or Mariam's tears. In Russia, there are similar flowers. They are of spotty colors by us and called hazel grouses. The travelers planned to walk up the mountain Osteran. Its height is 4,050 meters, but they couldn't. It was drizzling from early morning. Huntsman gave the travelers tea and persuaded not to go up. Weather forecast was not comforting at all. And there was no surprise. Loristan confirmed the fame of the dampest region in Iran again. Citadel, Fala Ola Flak, in translation it means the heaven of heavens, was built in Horimabada during the reign of Sassanids 3rd-7th centuries. Because of the damp climate of Loristan, it was very important to locate the buildings in such a way that dominating winds could blow the walls and save them to grow musty from dampness. To reach the water, we had to dig the well at a depth of 40 meters. In the mid of 20th century, during the reign of dynasty Pahlavi, there was a prison and fortress. Now it is a museum dedicated to the history of the country and city.
New?
No, new
Экспонат.
forefront. Ага, новая находка.
In Iran, Muslims Shiites live. It is a usual thing to see the funeral in the streets. It is mourning for Imam Hussein and other Shahids died for the belief and fatherland. Oriental hospitality. These two words describe the attitude of Iranians travelers. They are always ready to help tourists with a piece of advice. They treat and ask over. In the evening, they give lodging for a night. Dasful was called Daspol before. Its name consists of two words, Das, fortress, and Pal, bridge, and is translated as bridge to the fortress or reinforced bridge. The fortress has not been saved till our times, even if it existed, but the bridge exists. It was built by Roman war prisoners, captured by the army of King Shapur the Great in the 4th century. From that moment, the monument to the grandeur of slave labor stands here. The ruins of watermills are seen from the bridge. They were built in 3rd century BC and were used at the intended purpose up to the beginning of 20th century. All ancient buildings in the old city were laid from unbaked clay. They are gradually destroyed and changed to standard concrete boxes. Originating in mountain Zagros River Karun is the largest in Iran. It goes in deep canyon which separates the old city from new areas.
Всегда выручать будет.
Ну, бери.
Предлагаю.
Полезная вещь.
Бесплатно. Заезжайте. Это что у нас?
Шуштар.
Стар. Заходите тут в
Пока
какой-то
кучу не
переулок.
разобрали. Дефицитного товара.
И в вашем распоряжении горы кирпича.
In 3rd century, Roman war prisoners worked in Shustar and building of Banda Kaisar, or Caesar's Dam. Construction of about 500 meters long is considered the farthest eastern bridge built by the Romans. Later, during the times of Safavid dynasty, which began its reigning in the 14th century, next to the dam, engineers created a complex hydrotechnical construction. Water was distributed in a number of separate streams to turn the wheels of water mills. All this variety of channels, waterfalls and rapids are included in the list of UNESCO World Heritage Objects.
Друзья, арбузные семечки.
Вареный в каком-то...
В иранской семье. В Шуштаре.
Чай.
In Iran, it is difficult to refuse invitation, and it's silly to refuse a cup of tea in a hot day. We decided not to stay for a night. Sun is still high in the sky. Having taken a glance at a hydrotechnical museum of ancient Iran from above, from a high precipice on the right bank of the river, the travelers went to the bus station.
Укомплектовались нормально. Комплектовка полная.
Yazdan beri Yaz kardeşleri.
Яс, это хорошее место, да.
Окей.
Но в начале Шуш, да.
О, с музыкой.
Почти Высоцкий.
По очереди, все по очереди. В автобус заходим по очереди.
Называют по имени. Без паспорта не пускают.
Не, ну без паспорта.
Да, если на фотографии не похож в паспорте, то все.
Теперь наша очередь.
Да.
In the evening, we got to Shush. The fortress is lighted but obviously empty and lifeless. Near the burial vault of Hebrew prophet Daniel, looking as a typical Shiite mosque, there is much noise and many people. There is no place near the tomb, and even all courtyard is crammed with people. There are many women with children here. They are clustering together near octagonal fountain, and men are taking part in the ritual of remembrance of shahids.
يا زوجة علي يا بنت النبي يا زوجة علي يا أم الحسن وحسين يا أمي.
Then I lifted my eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram, which had two horns, and the two horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the high came up last. I saw the ram pushing westward, and northward, and southward, so that no beast might stand before him, neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. but he did according to his will and became great. This vision, written in the Bible in the book of Daniel the prophet, took place on the bank of river Karun, the very river which the tomb is standing at. In the scriptures of Old Testament, city of Shushan is often mentioned. It is the ancient capital of Elam. It is written about in the book of Esther, Nehemiah the prophet and Daniel the prophet. But there are no exact coordinates there. There were many hypotheses, and only in the end of the 19th century, the archaeologists could hardly establish that ancient Shushan was Iranian city Shush in the province of Khuzestan. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, and with a great crown of gold, and with a garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Susa rejoiced and was glad. Such description is written in the Bible in book of Esther about the event that occurred here. The most intensive excavations were conducted in the end of 19th century. During this period, in these places lived martial tribes, not obeying Persian authority. Archaeologists had to save their lives themselves. The government of France gave money to the building of fortress. Later on there was opened the Archaeological Museum.
Угощают огурцами на руинах Чугузамбила.
Durun Tash, or in the modern Persian Choga Zambil, is the ancient temple complex, extant from Elam state, one of the most ancient on the earth. It is called Zikkurat, from the Babylonian language Zigguratu, top of the mountain. The main component for the building of Zikkuratov was air brick, additionally reinforced by the layers of
Самая
reed.
древняя пирамида мира, можно сказать. Ну и вот, строители.
The city was surrounded by 3 lines of wall. The first wall surrounded Zikkurat itself. Between the first and the second walls, there was king's palace and temples dedicated to different gods. There are few things left after them. Excavations were conducted in the middle of the previous century by French archaeologists. Ahvaz, the winter residence of Persian kings, now is administrative center of the province Khuzestan. There are few things left after this ancient city. Along river Karun, there is a park with embankment, gym apparatuses, and a number of fountains. The local bus station gives an opportunity to go to any big city of the country.
Куда-нибудь поехали. Мы поехали.
То, что поехали, мы поехали
автобус.
лежа едем.
Замечательный город, о котором много писал Есенин. И который мы очень хотим.
Есенин? В прошлый раз?
Да.
Обалденно. А что он там делал?
Часто туда ездил. Как бы не был красивший раз, он не лучше рязанских раздолей.
Класс. В общем,
Понял, классиков надо читать.
раз это класс. Так сказал Есенин.
Iranian province Fars is the historic center of the country. Its name originates from Old Iranian word Parsu, strong man. Later on the ground of it appeared the name of the people, Persians, and country, Persia.
До свидания.
The capital of province Fars is Shiraz. Fortress Karim Khan is the most impressive construction in the center of Shiraz. During the reign of Zand dynasty, in the 18th century, there were king residence here, after all, prison. Now in the courtyard there is an orange garden. There is a small museum of local history, in the building surrounded by the court and decorated with huge windows. Shiraz is one of the most popular centers for tourists in Iran. Here you can run into foreigners, and even Russian-speaking ones.
Это голланд, если видеть русских, то такие же. Это непонятно. Я никогда не видел в России такие же.
Vakil is a market in the center of Shiraz. It's intended for tourists.
Кисленькая. Попробуешь? А прикольно.
When I choose the beauty of Shiraz, my idol, for her mole I give Samarkand and Bukhara, wrote the native of Shiraz, Haji Shams Adin Muhammad Hafiz Shirazi, poet and Sufi master, one of the greatest lyricists of the world poetry. In Iran, he has many male admirers and much more female ones. They come at the tomb of their idol with the volume of favorite verses and flowers. On the gravestone there is a verse of Hafiz carved, "When you come to this tomb, show your magnanimity. Do not judge those idler pilgrims who have gathered here." Near Shiraz there are lots of ancient temples, palaces, tombs, and cities in ruins. Next to town Firuzabad, there are ruins of Zoroastrian temple Kalaya Doktar. In the past there was a mountain lift, but after Islamic revolution the number of tourists decreased greatly and the lift was closed. Neither gate, no fence, no security.
Вот дорога, через низ.
One has to go and think about what exactly it is.
А здесь, кажется, дороги нет.
Все,
Прыгаем.
приехали.
There were no ceilings in Zoroastrian temples. Zoroastrians worshipped the sky and the fire, so they were called fire worshippers.
Приходится ехать автостопом. Привыкли, правда, на такси разъезжать. Как-то уже автостопом ехать уже даже спортивно, но приходится.
А, это наши, это оказывается русские. А мы думали иранки.
Palace Ardashir Parakan was built in 221 AD for the king Ardashir, the first from dynasty Sassanid. There were 3 grand domes on the palace. They were to testify the grandeur of Persian state. The main dome, destroyed partially, rose to 18 meters. Inside the palace there was a throne hall and an assembly hall for foreign ambassadors. Night caught the travelers when they were on the wheat field. They stayed for the night at the edge of it. And in the morning they departed to necropolis Naqsh-e-Rustam, which was just a stone's throw from there. The tombs of the kings from dynasty Achaemenid are carved in the rock at a decent height from the ground. They're famous as Persian crosses. It's clear why. In the center of every giant cross in the rock there is a small cell, while there is a sarcophagus. There are the most powerful Persian kings of 6th to 5th BC buried. Kaber Zartosh, from Persian stands for Zoroastrian cube, was built in 5 BC. The triumph of Persian king Shapur I over the Roman emperors Valerian and Philip August is shown on the relief. On the other reliefs, there are scenes of great battles with participation of Persians. On the oldest relief, the national hero Rustam is supposed to be imaged. His heroic deeds are described in details in the poem of Firdousi Shahnameh. Old Persian city Tahte Jamshid is famous under his Greek name Persepolis, that literally means city of Persians. The ruins of the city, that from 520 BC was the capital of powerful empire of Achaemenid, take a very large territory. Palace Apadan stands on the terrace elevated over ground level at 4 meters. There is a solemn procession of high officials and servants imaged on the stone's plates. Grand gates of all states, decorated with giant winged oxen with human heads. Foreign ambassadors went to the King's Palace through these gates. Now it is the main entrance and exit of Persepolis for tourists. Pasargadi, or Gardens of Fars, is the ancient Persian city. Ruins are scattered at square of 2 square kilometers. The mausoleum of Kir the Great rises solely right next to the entrance. In 6 BC, he established the first Persian state. This pyramidal-shaped mausoleum inspired architect Shushev to build mausoleum for Lenin at the Red Square. The ruins of 2 kings' palaces are also saved. Then, a piece of wall of the building, which is also called Solomon's Prison, and the fortress Toletat on the hill, where one can have a glance at the whole ancient city from at once. To be exact, the things left after it. There are no hotels in small towns in Iran. but there are rooms for pilgrims practically near each mosque. Not only Muslims can stay there. In Iran, every guest is a minister of Allah. City Yazd, or Yazd, is one of the most ancient cities of Iran. It is famous for its original cooling systems of houses. Windcatcher, or towers of wind, serve to pump in cool air into the house. Despite the city is about 5,000 years old, the most vivid architectural construction are the mosques. Mosque Amir Chakmak is a visit card of Yazd. There was time when tourists were permitted to visit minarets, but now the building is in emergency state and the entrance is closed. The figures of water carriers are installed in the fountain. Here, among desert, water is always worth weight in gold, and water carrier is the most honorable occupation. Friday Mosque Jameh was built in 13th century, but it looks strong enough. Its minarets, 52 meters high, are the highest in Iran. The entrance is free, but except empty rooms there is nothing to look at. Except for tourists. All buildings are used as hotels and restaurants for tourists. Ancient mud dwellings are gradually destroying. Not all hosts have enough money for expensive restoration. There is no money even for repair of mosques. Saint Said Rohnaddin Mausoleum was built 7th century ago and is also repaired inactively. The old city is a complicated net of interlaced streets that are hidden from the scalding sun. It is easy to get tangled there, as you may not understand where the east and west are. Markings of the crossroads will help you. They show the direction to the most famous sites.
Alexander prison, да.
Zendana, Alexander, or the prison of Alexander, doesn't relate to Alexander the Great. Earlier, this building wasn't a prison. It is a madrasa built in the 15th century. There are lots of rooms underground, but they were dug not for keeping criminals. It is colder there than exteriorly in the daytime.
Смотри, здесь холодно уже.
Реально.
Офигеть. Так вот и живем под землей.
In Yazd, there are a lot of underground rooms, often derelict.
Чтобы почувствовать, как здесь живется в подземелье, вот так вот сюда и спускаются люди. Дальше прохода нет.
The Zoroastrian temple, Chak Chak, is carved in the mountain Payasaps, 70 kilometers away from Yazd. There are steps that goes from the park into the temple. The temple itself is a small cave with an altar and the water dripping from the ceiling. The sound from fallen drops in Russian it sounds as kap kap, and in Persian chak chak, gave the name to an ancient sanctuary. Water is considered to be sacred, and every pilgrim or tourist can't resist the temptation to taste it. The mountain slope in the neighborhood with the cave is built up with houses. They belong to the pilgrims who arrived to the cave during the most significant religious holidays.
Самый крепкий алкогольный напиток в Иране. Это забродивший дух.
Кумыс, другими словами, да?
Вообще говоря, йогурт, вода, соль, а в приличных духах еще добавляют или огуречный рассол, или мяту.
Maybod is one of the oldest cities of Iran. In the 14th century, it was the capital of the country. The fortress Narenj, known also as the castle Narin, was constructed on the hill Galin in the pre-Islamic times. Being in the fortress, you can see quarters of one-color brick houses and narrow and curved small streets.
Вот это как раз караван-сарай.
The travelers examined old caravanserai and the so-called ice house in the dark. It wasn't possible to find either hotels or mosque with rooms for pilgrims in Maybod for a night. They had to sleep in some garden under pistachios.
Осла съели там. А мы там ночевали.
В саду мы были. Да?
фисташковым?
Да.
Там кости от мамонта.
Это съели там, волки. Я же говорю, волки.
From the early morning, we were on the way to Isfahan. All tourist routes around the city begin on the central square, Imam Square of Khomeini.
Кто на такси, кто на извозчике, кто пешком ходим, много-много ходим. Ходим, бродим, ну ладно, мы поехали.
The square, 512 and 153 meters in size, is the largest in Iran. It is the second by size in the world and consists only of Tuananmen Square in Beijing. Sheikh Lutfullah's mosque was built on the east side of the square at the beginning of the 17th century after the personal order of the Shah Abbas I. The Mosque of the Imam, or the Shah's Mosque, that is the largest mosque in Isfahan, was built approximately in the same years. Walls, niches and ceilings were decorated with a mosaic, an ornament and a ligature. There are lots of mosques in the old city. Most of them are either being repaired now or need repair urgently. 50 years after the death of the Prophet Muhammad, Yazid ibn Muawiyah seized the power in the Islamic world. The Imam Hussein didn't recognize his supremacy. The opponents met in the battlefield in al-Kufi's vicinities. We came here not for the sake of war, but we can't surrender to the force and evil. We will prefer death to humiliation and approval of tyranny. And blood of those who are killed by tyrant steadily wins the victory over the swords of this tyrant, said Imam Hussein before he and all his supporters and relatives were killed, and their children and women were took as prisoners. In memory of this tragic event, special ceremonies are held on the streets of the Iranian cities and in the courts of mosques. During these ceremonies, the participants beat themselves with iron chains and lashes. They want to feel on their own skin the torments that Imam Hussein had to overcome, and at the same time they want to pay a tribute to the memory of all Shiites who became Shahids, the sacred soldiers of Islam. Live hens are sold in the poultry market as domestic pets, but not for meat. Carrier pigeons of the most different types and colors can be found there. And mortar-shell parakeets are also sold there. And, what is absolutely surprising, colored chickens. The excursion across Isfahan began on the central square, and here it comes to an end. Before the sunset, when the heat starts falling down, not only tourists come there, but the local people as well. The atmosphere is informal like in the city park on the day off.
На главной площади Исфахана сидим, пикник устроим, кушаем.
Мечети никого.
С красивым видом.
When it gets dark, all people move from the square to the central city street, filled with shops and snack bars. There are so many people that sometimes traffic jams occur. Ziand River flows through the center of Isfahan, dividing the city into two approximately equal parts. Ancient bridges that are built through it are considered to be tourist sites, but not only tourists come to the river. A park that is very popular among the locals stretches along it. In the evenings, there is not an inch of room there. The whole families come there, including grandfathers, grandmothers, grandsons and great-grandsons. Young people, of course, prefer to crowd together, away from parents. On one bridge, people sing bard songs. On other, religious anthems. There is no police anywhere, but there are no disorders. Nobody harms anybody. There is no drunk person, several thousands of people. It's fantastic.
Традиционный иранский завтрак: лепешка, масло, сыр, джем из моркови, яйцо и черный чай с сахаром. Зато в любом количестве.
Very, very good.
Kashan is the most ancient city of Iran. Those three magicians who came to welcome baby Jesus lived exactly there. Old houses are not preserved today. The earthquake that happened in 1778 razed them to the ground. Everything that is possible to see now has been constructed later on ruins. Most old buildings, palaces and mosques were built in the 19th century. Kashan always was a trading city, and the local covered market is its main site. As in the Soviet period, in the USSR, there were palaces of culture. There, the real palaces of trade are. Everything that Iran is rich in is sold in the market. The most part of the goods that are on sale there is done in neighboring rooms or directly behind a counter at the time when there is no buyers. In the center of the market, in the waiting room of an ancient Bath tea house was opened. Tea is amazing. It goes with a wide selection of sweets and spices. The sellers offer the visitors a traditional Iranian dish, soup aghbusht. It is extremely hot and is sold in a clay pot, directly from the furnace. It should be eaten skillfully. In the beginning, it is necessary to merge the liquid in a metal plate and mash the remain thick in a pot. Meat, fat-tail fat, potato and lentil, with the help of a special mortar. The business passes from father to son. The current owner, he is not young now, inherited it from his father and grandfather.
Now this is tea house.
He remembers the time when there was not a tea house but a bath. Demand for bathing services fell, so it was necessary to train for a new profession.
Горячая вода.
Place.
But the bath wasn't broken. It was preserved waiting for better times. The covered market stretches for several kilometers. People start working early in the morning, and in the afternoon market streets become empty. Borujerdi's house was built by the architect Ali Mariam Kashani. It is decorated with the rich stucco molding, bas-reliefs, paintings and frescoes created by the artist Sani Ol Malkom and his apprentices. The buildings that are surrounding the yard and green vegetation are reflected in the mirror of the pool of the extended form. The two-story stateroom is decorated with niches and frescoes. Behind it, there is one more room that looks simpler. Below, there is a deep, cool cellar for product storage. Mosque Aha Bozorg is one of the most impressive and biggest construction of Kashan. The admission is free. The fortress that is situated in the very center of Kashan was constructed by an order of Sultan Malik Shah in the 11th century. The swollen cup walls and pyramids that are not less great than pyramids in Egypt, though they are of different form, have remained till today.
Классно.
А где вода? Короче, подадитесь. Правда крылышко? Вау, ни хрена себе. А я?
А не сливай.
Давайте все потихоньку. Ну ты спрыгивай, скинем эти рюкзак-то. Ага, вы меня придавите им. Да не придавим, не придавим, это идет. Отдайте мне рюкзак. Ну подали бы, что ли, ёшкин кот.
Пересекаем. Лень обходить. Думаем так. Италия. Руссия.
О, давай рюкзаки.
Путин, да.
Ой, ой, чуть-чуть. Опа, все.
А, и прыгать. Как советуют. Говорит, ты, говорит, не парься. Прям сразу раз и прыгай. Да?
девочкой.
Отойдите. Ой, супер.
The garden Shanin, or Bathin, was created in full accordance with Islamic idea of paradise. It is walled in and there are lots of greens and streaming water inside. The garden was created at the beginning of the 16th century, in the period when the Shah Ismail I, the founder of the Safavid dynasty, reigned. And for the succeeding governors it remained the favorite place for having rest in summer. Water arrives from the Soleimani source. It is rich in mercury. This water is not recommended to drink, but it is useful to take bath there. There are plenty of green plane trees, artificial reservoirs, fountains, and ancient buildings in the garden.
В каждом иранском автобусе есть женский отдел, есть мужской отдел. Женщин всех назад, мужчин вперед.
Садимся в задний.
Это для женщин, а здесь отдел
А мы садимся
для людей.
спереди, потому что мы люди.
Сняли уже целый автобус.
Женщина туда, к вам.
The village Abyan lies at the height of 2100 meters above the sea level.
Вот такая ночная деревня в Яне. Никого нет, кроме нас, пятерых.
It is very cold there in April. Travelers prefer to stay in hotel instead of freezing in a tent.
Пиши без номера, они сами впишут в крайнем случае.
Это что?
Место выдачи.
The village Abyan is almost unchanged since the 3rd century. People always were isolated there and didn't mix up with strangers. Islam was accepted, but women didn't change the color scarves on the black ones, traditional for Iran. The name of the village is translated as a place where willows grow. Willows are really growing there, but there are much more apple trees than willows. The youth leaves this place searching for the job, and only old men and women live in the village. The village was stuck to a mountain slope. It is densely built up with red clay houses, with balconies, decorative lattices, carved wooden doors and arched windows. There are lots of narrow streets, lanes and ladders. There is a mosque and a grocery bench.
Что-то дают попробовать нам. А, это, наверное, алча. Ой. Поймал.
Спасибо.
Алча.
Hoşmaze.
Алча.
And we are again on the way.
А штука на Миринду похожа.
Да. Ты по цвету.
The bus stopped at a roadside snack bar on the way to Tehran.
Рад опять в Тегеран вернуться.
Да. Но тут же уезжаем.
И тут же рады уехать.
We didn't stop in the capital of Iran and went to submit the highest point of the country. Davaman, in translation from Persian, means smoking. Vulcan doesn't act, but its top, that is 5,610 meters high, is almost constantly shrouded with clouds. The Rostrians claim that the evil ghost Divarasp is shut in the subsoil of the mountain. The smoke curling at top is his breath.
Да, попали вот в такой клуб восходителей. Вернее, восходителей самих нет, да. Но есть. Клуб есть.
Здесь все заночуют, да?
Похоже.
Upon my house only.
Travelers found a shelter in the house of the grandfather Hassan. Grandpa Hassan explained that the rise on the volcano wasn't difficult. It is possible to climb on the top during the day, but we could not return alive. When people rise swiftly on the height over 5 kilometers, they usually face with height sickness. The only well-tried remedy is gradual acclimatization. That's why the route to top is divided on 3 days, with spending the night in a mosque and a mountain hut. But it's actual only for a summer season. In April, snow lies above, and it is dangerous to rise on the top even for skilled climbers with special equipment.
Only summer, these 2 months finish, 2 months. These months finish, orada behest, orada, okay. 2 months finish, 2 months finish.
Early morning, very sunny, warm in the sun.
Yes, only summer, very good, very hot.
Ой, раннее утро, очень солнечно. На солнце тепло.
So the mountain climbing expedition is cancelled, but nobody forbids wandering on the lower volcano slopes. The track lies between 2 hills. The snow that dropped out at night gradually thaws in hot rays of the April sun. Then, rather gentle, slope begins. It is not frosty, but the wind is so strong that it almost knocks down. Having gone down from the volcano, travelers came to the highway and went to Tehran by the passing bus. The travel across Iran comes to the end. A visa-free world project goes on. There are new trips to the countries that are visa-free for Russians waiting for us.